Good evening, Professor Lin. This is your favorite group here, reporting from Zane's apartment here in Vista del Sol. We're all gathered here right now. We would like to present to you the culmination of our semester, our much enjoyed semester on retail data analytics. My name is Daniel Whitcop.
James Ward.
Ian Scarpula.
Zane Jureski.
Bjorn Osterman.
And Kristen Arendt.
We hope you enjoy it.
So some of the problems that we decided to research for our project was how do the variables influence sales? We thought that this was important because if we would be able to find a correlation between any of these variables and the level of success the stores saw, we would potentially increase sales. Another problem that we decided to research was at what point do markdowns become effective in increasing store and department sales? We thought this was important because analyzing the data to see if there is a point when enough markdowns don't drive sales and actually result in a profit loss will be crucial. The next
Dr. Lin, it is your favorite student here, Zane Jureski, and I'm reporting in with the key elements to our research. As you can see, I have your key elements to consider, the variables to consider listed down under the first bullet point. Now, those variables include weather, gas prices, holidays, unemployment rate, markdowns, and consumer price index. Now, all of these represent our dependent variables that we analyzed to find their significance in predicting the independent variable of weekly sales. Now, I'm not going to touch on what our results found. Daniel will do that later in this presentation. But just after a brief look at each of these, I can tell you, our predictions going into this, we thought, okay, if weather's very bad, if it's snowing, that would decrease sales. If it's very sunny and people are getting their vitamin D and happy, they might be more inclined to go out and buy things. If the gas price, moving on to the second point, if the gas prices are high, that would our analysis, our prediction in the beginning was, it would discourage people from going out because they didn't want to spend more money. Of course, holidays, you can see from my picture. I just had to zoom in on that poor lady with the red hair. Oh my, it is an absolute zoo in there. Obviously, holidays, as we can see now in the stores, the sales are spiking. Unemployment rate, with less people in the market getting paid, the circulation of money is decreasing, so maybe the sales are decreasing as well. Markdowns, of course, stores do markdowns to spike sales, so you'd think those would increase sales. And lastly, consumer price index, which is, just how much people are willing to pay for X product, and when shifting that up or down, how much does it really affect people going to the store to buy that? So with that, those are why those dependent variables were picked, and we'll move on into Bjorn's part, which is ETL at first look.
The first thing we did to extract the data was download it from Kaggle into Excel, which is where we encountered our first obstacle. A significant number of fields were filled with NA because the data was not quantitative. In order to battery this, we utilized an if function in Excel to change all the NA fields into zeros so we can move on to creating reliable pivot tables. The next thing we did was transform the data by creating pivot tables outlining stores by weekly sales. Then we copied the pivot tables without the headers and put them in separate worksheets, which allowed us to run multiple regressions via the JMP plugin in Excel. Once in JMP, we were able to run several multiple regressions to identify which variables had the largest impact on sales. At first glance, the ETL shows that it wasn't always the largest stores in the top 10 for weekly sales. In fact, it was many of the smaller stores in the top 10, which leads us to see that size does not necessarily correlate to higher sales.
Alrighty, so let's get down to brass tacks here, or some would say the meat and potatoes of everything. I'm going to present the models applied in the analysis that we found out through the whole process. So after compiling everything through the initial ETL, we were able to apply some models. First, we used JMP to be able to run multiple regression and also bivariate comparison. Multiple regression allowed us to weigh multiple dependent variables against one independent variable, the weekly sales, to see which one has the most significance and influence when predicting the weekly sales. It also generated us a linear equation to be able to predict the weekly sales based on the line of best fit. Also, we were able to use fit y by x to view a bivariate comparison and see more closely how one variable correlates to the other. Excel also came in handy. It allowed us to create pivot tables and pivot charts to analyze the data. I would now like to direct your attention to the screenshots on the slide. As you can see here, average unemployment turned out to be the lowest p-value and thus the most significant when predicting the weekly sales. And I would also like to direct your attention to the screenshot on the left side that shows the R-square value of 0.69 and the adjusted R-square value of 0.67 for the number of the dependent variables there. So yeah, and then the parameter estimates at the bottom will tell you the values in the linear equation that it produces. The average unemployment value being the most significant fooled us at first. We thought this would be very unlikely due to the fact that people being unemployed in the economy would most likely not cause there to be more sales, but we also conjured up the conclusion that maybe because stores don't have to pay salaries to their employees because they're unemployed, maybe that will generate them more profit. Switching over to the next slide, we have some more charts and graphs to show you. The first one shows the weekly sales related to the size of the store, and we see that as size increases, so does weekly sales. Thus, the larger the store, the more sales it is likely to generate, and you see that that is a very positive correlation. The graph right below it shows the weekly sales versus the month of the year, and you see that we have a drastic spike towards the end of the year, probably for the holidays. That makes a lot of sense, and then we have pretty plateaued around the summer months. And then the last screenshot we have here is the holiday sales screenshot, where we analyze the average sales when it's either a holiday and when it's not a holiday. We see here that when it is a holiday, the average number of sales seems to go up drastically, and that makes a lot of sense because people are trying to do holiday shopping or buy gifts for their family members during this time of year. Thank you.
So when looking for other researches, we actually found 3 that focused on singular variables, and these variables were cold weather, gas prices, and markdowns. So for cold weather, the article I found was The Cold Weather Effect Getting the Sales Advantage. This was on business.com and written by Julie Ellis. So this had a variety of examples and research based on how weather affects different stores. So one example I liked particularly was that sports cars dealers know that at a temperature of 75 degrees with sun, they'll increase their sales of convertible models. Likewise, SUV dealers know that their four-wheel drive vehicles will increase during the large first snowstorm of winter. So this was aligned in our research, and we found that sales were higher in winter months, which would be related to the decrease in temperature. So when stores have stocked up items that'd be particularly useful in winter months or in cold weather, the sales of those items will increase. So if the store has a lot of those, there will be increased sales for those months. The second article focuses on gas prices. This article is from NACS magazine titled How Gas Prices Affect Consumer Behavior by Jeff Leonard. So this article talks about how the increase and decrease of fuel prices affect consumer spending habits and driving habits. So this was interesting because the article found that there was not a significant increase or decrease in consumer driving depending on gas prices. So our findings particularly found that there was a direct correlation between gas prices rising and store revenue rising. And the article found that low gas prices does not mean consumers will drive more. So we assumed that more consumers would take advantage of cheaper gas and go out more to shop, but this was apparently not the case. The last article I found was about holiday markdowns. This article was on CNBC, titled Retailers Trying to Predict Holiday Demand, written by Christina Gustafsson. This talked a lot about how retail stores attempt to use markdowns and then their effect on consumers, as well as trends that could help predict inventory needed. So a lot of stores use markdowns to kind of condition those consumers to increase their price spending during the holiday season. So this was very impactful because our data found that markdowns did not have a significant effect on sales, except when they are used in large numbers in close proximity. And this aligns with a lot of those Black Friday sales and holiday sales when stores are using them in such high quantity. So these are the results we were kind of able to draw conclusions from in our researches. And with that, we'll be heading into findings, conclusions, and some new questions we have.
In conclusion, we found that we were able to answer our initial questions well with our analysis. As Daniel mentioned previously, the unemployment rate and the consumer price index were the most significant with a p-value of virtually 0. This means they are the variables that influence weekly sales the most. The least significant factor, however, was the markdowns. When there was 5 markdowns in place, we found that it was a lot more significant. We also mentioned that the larger the store, the more sales stores tend to have. Additionally, the most sales happened during the winter months, such as October through December. And lastly, we found that the average sales on holidays were much greater than those during the non-holidays. However, we were unable to conclude whether the weather or fuel prices had a significant impact on the sales. Through our research, we believe retail stores can use our findings to better support their future strategies. With our findings, they can be more efficiently move forward and generate more sales. And our final questions that we would like to ask in the future is, does the unemployment rate affect the customer frequency of the stores? And why, when gas prices rise, are people more willing to drive to department stores and spend money? And the last question is to analyze the positive correlation between consumer price index increasing and the amount of sales in the retail stores we observed.